Now, back to the Ryan Waters Sports Drive.
Welcome back to the Sports Drive. With the NFL season just a couple days away, kickoff is on Thursday. The Packers and the Saints, a lot of folks are getting into their fantasy football drafts coming up this week. And we have Luke, our resident football fantasy freak, on the phone. Luke, good day to you.
How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing good. I'm excited about this upcoming season. I like the parity that I'm seeing around the National Football League. Let's get right into the draft. I'm looking at the NFL.com fantasy player rankings. I don't know how much stock you take in that, but I'm noticing that 7 of the top 10 guys are running backs. Do you like how the NFL has ranked their players?
You know, I like how the NFL set up their rankings. When you go onto the NFL.com website, they've based their rankings on how they kind of set up their default leagues. So their default league is pretty much how you would see a regular league set up, and that's with your pretty average scoring system. So that deals with touchdowns of any sort, 6 points, rushing, receiving yards, 1 point per 10 yards, and passing yards for quarterbacks, 1 point for every 25 yards. So the way NFL.com set their website up is exactly based on that format, which is pretty much how most leagues are run. So that's why I really like it, because pretty much anyone can go to that website and feel pretty good about the rankings that are there. So yes, no, definitely like the way they've set it up, and I definitely recommend you go there.
Is that why we only see 2 quarterbacks in the top 10, Aaron Rodgers from the Packers, Michael Vick from the Eagles, because rushing or throwing touchdowns from quarterbacks isn't as many points as receivers and running backs will get?
Well, yeah, the reason you see a lot of the running backs there is because running backs, the tier kind of when you look at the running backs and you break them out into, say, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 running backs, and the drop-off between a tier 1 and tier 2 running back is a lot greater than what you'd see between, say, a top 5 quarterback and a quarterback ranked 6 to 10 when it comes to fantasy. You have to remember also running backs touch the ball almost 1, 2 times out of every 3 downs. They're going to get the ball a lot. They rack up the most points in fantasy. And so when you look at it and you say, you've got those top 5 running backs, Adrian Peterson, Chris Johnson, Arian Foster, I bet your Ray Rice is in there too. Yeah. And then you look at the rest of them, say a guy from Philadelphia, I think it's LaShawn McCoy and Rashard Mendenhall in Pittsburgh. Well, Adrian Peterson, Chris Johnson, Arian Foster, Ray Rice, those guys are way better and get the ball and get the yards and get the touchdowns a lot more than, say, a LaShawn McCoy or Rashard Mendenhall or someone like that. So, and then when you take into effect the quarterbacks, when you look at the top quarterbacks, you've got Aaron Rodgers, Michael Vick, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning. That would be your top 5 quarterbacks. When you look at the next level of quarterbacks, you'd have Big Ben, you'd have probably Tony Romo, Phillip Rivers in there. When you look at, say, a guy like Tony Romo, last year he missed, I believe it was 10 or 11 games. Yeah. If you took his stats from the 5 games-ish that he played and you extrapolated them, that's a big word for fantasy kids out there, over a full season, he would be a top 5 fantasy quarterback in terms of points. So the spread between, say, as I said, a tier 1 guy at a QB position and a tier 2 guy is a lot narrower in the quarterback position than, say, in the running back position. There's a big drop-off in points, a bigger drop-off in points in running backs than quarterbacks when you kind of move through the level of skill in each of those positions.
When you talk about quarterbacks, one of the guys that may not start on Sunday for the Indianapolis Colts is Peyton Manning. Is that going to affect any drafts this week?
It will impact drafts because it's just going to depend upon how risk-averse someone is, right? So when you look at Peyton Manning and when you look at, yes, I've looked at some mock drafts around the league just to see where he is fallen, and I know that's pretty dorky of me, but you need to do that. I've seen him go as low as the 5th or 6th round, which is shocking because in the previous years, Peyton Manning would be a top 10 guy. Now, I heard Tony Dungy maybe a week or two ago on the radio or on TV saying Peyton Manning's the only way he doesn't start is if he's dead. But when you read the reports from this week, Peyton Manning's not going to be there in week 1, which is a shame because it's also going to break his Ironman starting streak.
Yeah.
And so, that streak's going to still belong to Brett Favre for quite some time. So I still think if Peyton Manning's there for you in your round 5, you take a flyer on because he's going to start at some point this year. Mm-hmm. And when he does start, he's a top-tier quarterback, and he's only going to pay dividends. So it's a matter of how risky you want, how risk-averse you want to be, or how much of a risk you want to take,
So what do we need to know? What do we need to prepare for this coming week as our drafts approach before the game on Thursday? What are 1 or 2 things that I need to know? Who am I going to pick?
Well, I think the first thing you need to determine in any draft is your team name. That's the key. You want to have a good team name because if you don't have a good team name, then the rest of your season is just going to go to hell.
Okay.
But after that, once you have a clever team name in effect, then I think what you need to do, well, there's 2 things. One is, before you make any decision, one is you need to figure out how many teams are in your league. So if you've got a 8, 10, 12-team league, that's going to obviously impact how many players are available in the starting positions for each of your roster spots. So you have to look at what your starting lineup needs to be, right? So let's say the standard league has 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a kicker, and a defense, and usually 1 flex position. The flex position allows you to start, it depends on the league, an additional wide receiver, tight end, running back, or QB. That's typically how they are set up. So let's say you're in a 10-team league and you have to start 2 quarterbacks. So that means automatically every week 20 quarterbacks will be starting. So because of bye weeks, which is something you also need to consider, because you don't want to have drafted 2 quarterbacks, say, on your team that have the same bye week, because then you have 2 quarterbacks that won't be able to play in that same week. So what you need to figure out then again is 10 teams, 2 quarterbacks, 20 starters. Everyone's going to draft a backup. So that's 30 quarterbacks that are gone automatically, theoretically, if you have a draft full of intelligent people, which most pools don't. So that would leave only 2 other quarterbacks for you to pick from. So it kind of contradicts what I was saying earlier about the quarterback position and when you want to draft, running backs being most valuable. But there are typically more running backs that score more points, or more running backs that are available for you to draft that can score points versus the quarterback position. So you need to just figure out a strategy when you go into your draft. How many starters you need, how big is your bench, and how many teams are in your draft. So typically, myself, if I were in that league I laid out before with 1 QB, 2 running backs, 2 wideouts, a tight end, a kicker, and a defense, and then a bench of 6 people, I would ensure that I had my quarterback and my running backs and my wide receivers, and then I'd probably start the year out with an extra QB, maybe 2 extra wide receivers, and 2 extra running backs, and an extra tight end. And that's your 6 bench. Kickers and defense, you don't need to pick up an extra one because at any point during the year when your kicker or defense has a bye week, you can just drop and pick up another one. Unless you have an elite defense, say like a Jets, Pittsburgh type defense, then, if you drop the Arizona Cardinals defense and you pick up the New York Giants defense, whatever, no one really cares, right? If you draft one Grammatica brother and you pick up another Grammatica brother, whatever, it's kickers. No one cares, right? So.
All right, there he is, Luke, a fantasy football freak. Thanks so much and happy drafting.
All right. Take care, Ryan.
Now, to be a guest right here on the Ryan Waters Sports Drive, just send me an email anytime, ryan@ryanwaters.ca. That's RYAN at ryanwaters with 2 T's.ca. I want to know about your teams. I want to know about your clubs. I want to know what's going on here in Kelowna and the Okanagan. It's the Ryan Waters Sports Drive. Again, ryan@ryanwaters.ca. Let's tell their story. Let's have their voice be heard, and we can do it right here on The Drive.
This has been the Ryan Waters Sports Drive.